Welcome everybody to the Dementia Alliance question and answer session with Melanie Bunn. Tonight we are talking about activities with people with dementia, and we're so excited that you could join us, whatever time it is, wherever you might be joining us from, 6 o'clock here in North Carolina. This session is sponsored by Raleigh Neurology Associates here in North Carolina, Eastside, and Aware Senior Care. And we thank our sponsors for making this possible. We do ask that you stay muted unless our speaker asks you to unmute. We welcome questions in the chat. The chat is located usually at the bottom of your screen. There's a little cartoon bubble that says chat. Feel free to click on that and type your questions in there. And tonight's speaker is our wonderful Melanie Bunn. Melanie is a nurse who we have worked with for many years, and she is our dementia trainer, our go-to for all of the difficult questions, and my dear friend. And so we are going to have a great conversation tonight about activities, and we do welcome you to turn on your cameras so Melanie can see who's here. And Melanie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. And I'm so glad to start to recognize some names and some faces. It's so wonderful to kind of see some people coming back after we've been working together over this past little bit of time. And isn't it wonderful? I find myself talking about hanging out in my kitchen on Zoom, and I've really got to celebrate that, because how else could we be able to be together on a stormy, ugly North Carolina night and not get rained on, so you can do your hair and not worry about, getting out there and things. So there are all kinds of reasons to be grateful that we can all be together tonight. So I want to be really conscious that these are kind of being offered as Q&A sessions. And so they really want to be very aware that people have chosen to be here because there's something on your mind that you're curious about when it comes to this topic of activities. So I want to leave the majority of the time today for us to really have those conversations and for us to really spend some time together, kind of thinking about activities and thinking about how to organize the day and thinking about how to make things work. So I want to start with a little bit of content because I think there is some value in giving a little bit of some background things to kind of talk about. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to talk about some of these things. So we're going to talk about a way of kind of organizing thoughts about, that's not right. Some of these things about, that's the right one. So we're going to start here. Cool. So what are the pieces? So I think it makes sense to kind of think about, there are these pieces of ways to spend time. Kind of how do we spend our days is we're thinking about matching that with the person's level of dementia. So where they are in dementia, and then putting that together with what is a usual day like and what are the likes and the dislikes of the person, and then how do we layer all of that in together. So the 4 ways to spend time. So we developed this years and years and years ago when I worked with people, and we worked together with, back then it was a different named organization, but we started thinking about there are different ways we kind of invest our time, different ways to make a day feel full and to make a day feel meaningful and to make a day feel valuable. There are different kinds of things we have to do. So one is leisure. And leisure are things that you just do just because you enjoy them. You do them because they're fun. If you had an extra day off, or if you had a few hours with nothing to do, these are the things you would do to make yourself happy. So I want you to take a moment and think for yourself, what are some of the things you do just because you enjoy them, just because they make you happy? And go ahead and drop some of those in the chat. Go ahead and drop some of the things that you do just because you enjoy them and drop them in the chat. What are some of those things? So I see a couple people putting down read, the art museum, take a long walk, walking or playing cards or reading. So some wonderful things. So what are some other things that might fall into there? For some, and you can unmute and just say it out loud if you'd prefer. Walking with friends. So let me ask you, in North Carolina in August, it can be around 122. So does that sound like leisure to some of y'all right now? Yes or no? Okay, hang on to that thought as we keep moving forward. So I see some thumbs down. So hang on to that thought as we keep coming, as we keep. So let's go back and look at the next one. So we've got that idea, but you have a good idea of what those leisure things might be. And Patricia's going, no, I hate the heat. So that sounds real good, but there's always a but. So let's look at the next one. So that's leisure. When Teepa and I were coming up with these things, the next one was self-care. And these are things that you do to take care of your physical body. These are life-sustaining kinds of things you've got to do just to keep the engine running. You've got to do these things to keep your body active, to keep your engine running, to keep yourself going. So you can see some little hints in there. So now take a minute and drop into the chat some things you would consider are keeping the body running kinds of things, some self-care kinds of things. So write some of those in there. And you can drop them in the chat, or you can, somebody can unmute and just share something with me they'd like. So we've got sleep in there. Basic hygiene kinds of things. So there may not be real joy in some of these things, but you got to do it. Exercise. Ooh, let's hold on to that. Getting your hair cut. Ooh, let's hold on to that. Exercise and yoga. Those are things you got to do to kind of keep your body going. So that's a good idea of those kinds of things. I also saw, so yoga and stretching and drinking tea in the morning. Some wonderful kinds of things are putting. So let's look at the next one. So the next one is work. And works are, now this is not going to surprise this group. This is not going to surprise this group. You do not get paid for all the work you do. So just because you're working, it doesn't mean, but these are things that make you feel competent and skilled, and they make you feel like you have value in the world. You are a valuable person. So take a moment and drop some of those in the chat, and let's see what comes up. What are some of those things that you might drop into the chat that you might really think of as work kinds of things?
Watering plants.
Okay, watering plants is some Dina kind of added in watering plants. So what are some of the other things? Cooking and baking and reading books and walking with a friend with issues. So being not just walking with a friend, having fun, casual, chatty, gossipy time, but walking with a friend who's really kind of struggling with things, helping somebody. Yeah, those are kind of work kinds of things you've got to, that you do, but they make you feel competent and good and skilled and important. And then the next one is, the last one is rest. Now, these are things that when you finish doing them, you feel refreshed and you feel energized and you feel rejuvenated and you feel like you are ready to go forth and do more things with your life. So drop some of those things in the chat. What are some of those things that might be, or unmute and say out loud some of the things that when you finish them, you feel better, you feel refreshed, you feel rejuvenated, you feel wonderful when you finish doing those. Okay. So Lisa said exercise. I think, did you mean that for rest and relaxation? Is that what you meant that, or did you mean that for the last one, Lisa? I think Luke needs to come and hang out with me. I don't think that's
Yoga.
really yoga. It's rejuvenating. Okay, so you feel energized afterwards. Because
Yes.
Luke put down, who is Luke? Luke is not a Luke, is it? Luke put down cleaning house makes Luke feel re-energized.
Luke is actually Dorothy.
I was thinking Luke didn't look like a Luke, but it could be Dorothy Luke. So
It's Dorothy. It's my husband's computer, so it says Luke.
I wondered because I was just thinking. So let's talk about some of these things, some of the things that were on here. Let's take a vote, and you can vote. Down at the bottom, you've got those little reactions. You've got a thumbs up that you can use, and you've got a little crying face that you can use. So let's think about which one of those you might be. How many of y'all would consider exercise to be self-care? So if you think exercise is self-care, put your thumb up. You think exercise is self-care. So there are a handful of people who are putting down exercise as self-care. Okay. So how many of you put your thumb up? I'm gonna let all the thumbs kind of clear off. It'll only take a minute. How many of you think of exercise as invigorating and refreshing, and when you finish it, you feel ready to go? So if you feel that way, put your thumbs up. So we've got not quite as many this time. Okay. So so we'll give a minute and kind of let those thumbs kind of go away. And I'm gonna ask another question. Who really considers exercise to be leisure time? Exercise is something you would do if you had extra time. If you had just a couple of hours to go do something fun, you would go and exercise with that. Put your thumbs up if that is what you're thinking. If going to the gym or going dancing or doing something like that, that's a fun thing. You would do that on purpose for fun. All righty. And here's the last one. How many of y'all really think of exercise as being work? It's something, and Sarah's laughing, and it's like, I do it, and Kanisha is not, is it Kanisha? I can't, there's a glare. Kanisha is groaning. So be honest with you. How many of y'all think, it's something I do because I'm supposed to do it. It feels so good to stop. If you're that person, put your thumbs up and don't be. So what did you notice about the responses within this group? And you can unmute and say it out loud, or you can drop in the chat. What did you notice just about these responses?
They're all different.
So they're different. So Jean, what did you consider exercise?
Some of it is, for me, is work.
So it's work. Is it anything else? Did you put any others or just work?
Yeah, it's really just work for me.
Okay, so for Jean, it is just really work. It is work. There's no fun. There's no pleasure. I feel like I am a worthwhile person because I have finished.
Yes.
Okay. Who had a different response to exercise? I know Lisa did. What did you have? Where did it fit for you, Lisa?
It fit in all of them, actually. It depends on the day and the time and what type of exercise, I think, but often it's rejuvenating. A lot of times it's work too.
So Lisa said it could be work, it could be rejuvenating, it could be self-care because it's something you've got to do to keep your body, and it could also be really fun. So when we start to think about this one activity means so many different things to so many different people, and I even heard some people say, maybe some days I like it and maybe some days I don't. Maybe some temperatures I like it and some temperatures I don't. Why do you think we've got such strong and intense and varied kind of responses to this one activity?
Because we're all different.
Absolutely, because we're all different. And so, what might bring a lot of joy to someone who is in a balmy climate, for someone in San Antonio, Texas, taking a nice long walk might not be what fills you up with joy. We're all different and we all like different things. We all enjoy different things. Things mean different things to us. Any other thoughts about why we might all be different or why we might have different responses? Does anybody think about a time in their life when maybe they felt different about exercise than they might now? So might there have been a time or a situation in your life that you felt different about exercise? Does somebody want to address that question?
It could be health wise.
Okay, so tell me more, Dinah.
Yeah. In other words, when you were much younger, it was much easier to exercise. Now that you're a little older, you might have health problems, it becomes more of a chore.
Okay.
And
So
that's why yoga is better. And that's something I feel excellent after I finish.
so Dinah's recommending yoga. I for some reason heard yogurt, and yogurt is good as well. But I think what I was supposed to hear was yoga, and this idea
Yoga.
that when you were at a different point in your life, maybe, and somebody put younger, thinner, healthier, and more fit. So maybe you used to love to take long walks, and now your knees bother you a little bit in the morning. So long walks in the morning aren't the thing that works quite as well as maybe a shorter walk later in the day when your knees are a little more comfortable. Maybe there was a time in your life when you were living on campus, you had a habit of walking and running into friends. Exercise felt really good then, and now there's pollution and you're not walking with somebody you care about, and it doesn't feel the same. So we've talked about, for us, the different types of things, the different categories that the same activity might fit into different categories for different people, and that the same activity we might perceive differently or have different experiences with at different times in our life. So how do you think this connects with people living with dementia? How do you think this same kind of question might work for people living with dementia? That might make it kind of challenging for us who are trying to figure it out.
It's at least my mom changes daily, really. So I need to be aware. I need to look at a fresh view of possible activities. That's a good reminder.
Okay. So Sarah, you said your mom is different every day. So tell me more about what kinds of things might happen.
What she wants to do, I suppose. I mean, so I have a little basket with things that we could maybe do together, or I could just put out on the table. And some days she picks them right up and does them, and other days just sets them, just doesn't even seem like she's ever seen them before. So I guess that just being aware of that's what's happening is we can all change our mind for one thing, and her mind is betraying her. So
And that's a really good point, is I might wake up in the morning some morning and feel good and have a lot of energy and be ready to go and excited to go do stuff. And I might like wake up some mornings and
MSN.
not so much, right? So that idea that people living with dementia also get to have energized days and kind of less energized days. So thanks for sharing that, Sarah. What are some other thoughts about how this might connect with people living with dementia, or with your person living with dementia? Have any of you tried some things that the person used to like that now aren't going over quite as well as they used to?
Maybe because they're confused, like something that they enjoyed before, they're uncertain about, or maybe they're not as good at. So therefore the joy of it, like I know, there might be a lot of uncertainty
Okay.
as to whether it's familiar or not familiar. So it's not as enjoyable. Before, let's say you're good at playing cards, or you like the strategy or something like that. Now you're confused as in what exactly this is about, or something like that. It's just a different perspective altogether.
Yeah, and as you were talking, that playing cards came to my mind, because I've worked with a lot of people who playing cards was really important. They had groups of people that they got together and they played cards, and they played, canasta or card games that are very, very complicated and lots of rules. And what started happening, was this work, or was this rest, or was this recreation, or was this self-care? For this getting together playing cards with friends, where would that fit?
be leisure.
Yeah.
It might be leisure, it might be recreation, leisure. So we get together with friends and we're having fun. What else might it be?
Relaxation
It
or
might be
enjoyment. Yeah.
it might be just relaxation. It might be, it's so relaxing to have people come over to my home. We just play cards. It just makes me feel like I just feel restored. It might be work. If it's my job to host the canasta party, it's my job to have the food and to provide for people. It might be a work experience, and it might be a self-care experience if part of what I've got to have to be healthy is relationships with others. So we take that thing that's really important, that people are doing really well, and what happens with dementia? What are some of the changes with dementia that start to make that not work as well? It's everything from games that involve strategy, which is this part of the brain, to games which require remembering, which is this part of the brain, to games that require, some visual kind of perception, which is this part of the brain. So all of the parts of the brain get involved with this and make this activity that used to be so wonderful not so good the way it used to be. But if we can't change the person living with dementia, we can't change their brain. What could we start to change as their brain starts to change? So think about, how do we change something from being really complex and challenging to something that might be familiar but not as hard to do, that still involves some of those same kinds of things? So what might we try to change?
So we need to change the game along the way because we can't change the person.
We can't change the person, so we might change the game. So maybe we move from playing something really complicated and sophisticated to a simpler card game. And we kind of do that planning and anticipating that instead of playing canasta, maybe we're
Oh,
hello,
okay.
hello. That maybe instead of playing canasta, maybe we're going to start playing something like Go Fish. Or maybe we're going to start playing something that's simpler. And then as we move through, are there other things we can do with cards? So maybe we take a bunch of sets of cards with different backs on them and throw them in a basket and mix them all up. And then I go to my friend Jean or somebody, I go to my friend Jean, I say, Jean, look at these cards. This is such a mess, isn't it? So Jean can unmute and talk back to me.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Jean, look at this basket of cards. They're just a mess, aren't they?
It's a mess.
It's
They're-
hey Jean, can you help me?
Should we sort them out?
I think we should. So
Okay.
now Jean and I can sit there for a while and we're still manipulating cards. We're still working with cards, but we're doing it in a way that she can be successful. And so that then becomes really important. Maybe we get to the point that multiple sets of cards is just too much for Jean to manage. So what we go down to is just sorting them into a suits. You know, we've got to figure out if we've got, then we count the cards to see if we've got the whole deck. We
Mm,
can still do things manipulating the cards, working with the cards, but we modify it. Do this with me. Take 3 fingers on this hand, any 3 fingers. Take 3 fingers on this hand and 5 fingers on this hand. So I've got 3 fingers on this hand. Now try to match them up. And what do you notice happens? You can't get it. It doesn't hook together. It's not right, right? So now take 3 fingers on this hand and 3 fingers on this hand and match them up. And what do you notice? They match nicely, right? And so what we're really trying to do is match the skills by changing the activity so it can be successful and fun. So I said I wanted to leave time for us to talk because it is question and answer. I could go on for another 6 hours, but I do want to see and I noticed somebody put something, and it was Kanisha wrote in the chat that sometimes people living with dementia think of their ability as being different than their new reality. So Kanisha, can you unmute and tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that? I
Sure.
agree with you. Yeah.
We have a lot of patients or family members, they love reading. And when they lose their vision or when they become vision impaired, they don't know what to do next. And it's hard to help them. We think that options like books on tape would be great. They hate it.
Mm.
They hate it. Or the e-readers that will read to them don't like it.
Okay.
And so it's hard to find something that fulfills that same desire in them.
Okay. So what you're noticing is there are people who have all their lives have loved reading.
Mhm.
And now when they get dementia and reading is hard, the automatic kind of replacement seems to be audiobooks, right? So for people who like to read, is there a difference between reading a book and hearing an audiobook? Is that different? So I see Sarah and Lisa and Jean are all nodding. So somebody unmute and tell me, what is the difference in the experience of reading a book and hearing a book? What's the difference? What does it feel? How does it feel different?
Reading a book,
Uh-huh.
my husband always loved to read, and he would underline certain passages or word in the book, and that was his thrill of doing it. And he has picked up a book every once in a while, and he still enjoys reading it, but then it becomes a little bit frustrating, and then he'll put it down.
Okay.
But the biggest thing of underlying a book.
So for him, the biggest thing was kind of reading the book and getting a new idea.
Yes.
or learning something that was interesting and different, and then underlining that different thing, kind
Yes.
of noticing it and pulling it out. And that doesn't happen as easily as well. It's not the same experience on it with an audiobook. So what's another thought about the difference between hearing and reading?
One is reading is an action. It's participatory, where audio is passive and just listening.
Okay. So reading seems to be more of an active kind of thing, and listening can kind of feel more passive. Okay. So Kanisha, oops, sorry. So Kanisha, what do you think about some of this conversation?
I agree with them, but also by hearing requires a lot of concentration. And when your mind is starting to slow down or maybe misinterpret things, it's hard to focus on what's being said. So you feel like you're left out of the conversation, even though it's just a book on tape.
Okay, so it may feel kind of disconnected.
Mhm.
You know, that hearing it might feel a little disconnected. So Kanisha, what kinds of things can you think of you might try besides audiobooks?
I'm not sure. I've been at a loss for that.
Yeah.
For the ones that can still see well, we found some alternatives by magazine.
Okay.
They look at the pictures, and then when it gets to the point they can't read the stories, they start kind of sorting them,
Yeah.
tearing out pages. But for the ones who kind of lose some of their cognitive ability and their vision, it's more complicated. They just kind of sit around more.
Yeah. So there was something in the chat about picture books or comics or makeup stories, and we actually have had in the office at some point some books that have pictures with just a few words that kind of can lead to kind of talking about the pictures. So they're kind of like the adult coloring books, but they're kind of adult story books. And so you can look at one that's about seasons, or you can look at one that's about family, and kind of go through and look at the words, but it's not so word heavy. It's really kind of picture heavy. And that could then trigger and stimulate some of those storytelling kinds of things. So someone said the Dr. Seuss books, and have that person kind of make up the stories that are part of that Dr. Seuss book. So I like all of those ideas. The other thing, what do we do with kids before they can really read all the words? What do we do with them? We sit and we what?
We read with them.
And that is exactly what you were getting. I was hoping you would say, Kanisha, is with, not to. Because books on audiobooks are kind of reading to versus reading with someone. So, if I have one of those chicken soup books and I'm holding it and the person is looking at it with me and I'm reading it out loud, maybe, or we're reading it together, maybe that works for some people. Although there's also a piece about reading that, we have book club to talk about the books, but we don't have book club to read the books together. We don't take turns reading paragraphs in book club. So there's something about maybe reading being a little more solitary that might or might not work. So, and Gail put down calendars and kind of have talking about a photograph and kind of building stories, because an important part of reading is stories. So that's a great question. I hope you got some help with that, Kanisha. So what are some other questions about your person living with dementia, and what kinds of questions you might have about activities and how to manage the day?
I kind of have a different problem than most people,
Mhm.
in that my husband's in the probably the beginning stages of, well, it's been mild to moderate Alzheimer's, but he didn't have a hobby. He didn't just read. He was literally an workaholic, not an alcoholic, a
Workaholic.
workaholic. That's the one I wanted.
Yeah.
And once that was taken away, that has been the hardest to deal with. And that's where I need help. I can't find anything that he wants to do, that he's interested in.
And that's a really great question, because it seems like a lot of times for men, it's harder to match up things to do. And I would add to that, people from this generation, because people who are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s didn't have a lot of time for recreation and leisure. And often when we think about activities, we go to that recreation leisure focus. We don't think about work. So what can we think about? Not thinking about, he used to work with computers, we've got to have him work. He can't work on computers anymore. But thinking about what were things that people used to do that used to make them feel productive and used to make them feel successful. So I've had a lot of working with people who've worked with their hands. So there are lots of ways you can do things with your hands. So I've done a lot of sanding. So do this with me. Hold out like you're bored. And now take a block that's got some sandpaper on it. And now start sanding your paper, your block, and then sand the edges of it, and kind of sand these edges and kind of sand some more. What is it about that experience that starts to feel really good? What it's
Well-
kind of what? Yes, Sarah?
Well, I think it's a soothing activity. But also you see something happening to your object. Maybe
Okay.
maybe you notice a different feel on the wood or something. That
Yeah.
might be rewarding. I don't know.
So you have an experience of making a difference. So you see some progress, and it's very rhythmical, right? So most human beings crave that sense of rhythm. So that's why we rock, and that's why we sing, and that's why, we walk with a pace that's got a lot of rhythm to it. So that idea of sanding is something that really, it's a tool, and it's all about the tools. So we make a tool that the person can use, and then it's that rhythmical kinds of things. So I can take that idea of something that's rhythmical, and I can use that in a lot of different ways. I can use that with what? What am I doing?
Dancing.
Dancing. I thought I was sweeping, but I don't sweep a lot. So it may have been. So you start thinking about what can you do that's got that rhythmical, that repetitive kind of thing that makes me feel purposeful. So maybe I'm wiping off a table. Maybe I'm wiping off a window. Maybe I'm sweeping or raking or doing something that's got that repetitive, rhythmical kind of thing. So maybe I'm picking up a box and I'm moving it over here, and I'm picking up a box and I'm moving it over here, and I'm picking up a box and I'm moving it over here. So having those factors can often make it just such a difference in that sense of having that sense of accomplishment. And we think about that for people early on because it can help them reduce their stress, and it can help people feel more settled. And I do a lot of those things for the purpose of doing something for someone else. So how many of y'all, and I usually have 5,000 around except when I'm looking for y'all, how many of y'all are starting to get calendars in the mail? If you've ever donated money to any nonprofit organization, you start to get those calendars, right? and you feel bad not using the calendars. And some of them are really, really pretty, but you've got a bunch of calendars. So let's think about those calendars and what we can do with those calendars. So we can actually flip through them and think about days. We can actually, I a lot of times will take the beautiful pictures and glue them to a piece of cardboard and then cut them into puzzles. Now, I don't want to do that. I'm not very arts and crafty. So I can actually do that over a period of 3 days. So one day we take the pictures and we look at the pictures and we go through them and we talk about them and we identify which ones are our favorites and which ones we want to use and which ones we don't care for. And then the second day we take those pictures and we glue them to, and that's a great activity that makes you feel loved and meaningful. And we glue them to a piece of cardboard. And then we've got to let that dry. And then the next day we can take and use scissors and cut them into jigsaws. And that's the next day. And then we can use them in all kinds of different ways. So we can also use those like we did the playing cards. So maybe we've got one puzzle that's mostly red and gold, and we've got another puzzle that's mostly black and purple. And we mix them together in a box and we say, oh my goodness, what's happened? We can't use these puzzles like this. We've got to do what?
Take them apart.
We've got to sort them out, and then we can take those puzzles and we can put them together. So it's that idea of taking something, using it. So that puzzle just became something that might be rest, sitting there talking about the photos. It might be something that is work, because we're doing it to help somebody else. It might be something that is recreation, because lots of people like to put together puzzles. So it can fit into a lot of those different things. If I'm somebody who, some people work with people at different, it's not my family member who's at this stage, it's a bunch of people. So we might take that same activity and we might have, some people have the ability to glue the puzzles down, to glue the pictures down, to cut them out. We might even have people who can take plywood and sand down the plywood and get a jigsaw and cut the puzzles out and then sand down the puzzle pieces. So we might even have some people who can do that kind of woodworking kind of activity. So it can be the whole range of different kinds of things that we can do.
I have a something that Natalie might be helpful is my husband. So Natalie, you're not alone with someone who's a workaholic. But in my case, same thing. My husband doesn't have any hobbies or things like that. And strangely enough, on his birthday, but he enjoys cars, automobiles. Okay. And he doesn't like physical exercise. But on his birthday, I backed out the cars and we washed them. And it was an interesting thing because his love is the car. We don't usually wash our cars. We send them to the car wash. But we got a bucket and some soap and the sponges. And it dawned on me like that was the best birthday present because we were out there, talk about rhythm and cleaning. And then I saw, after such a long time of just, he's checked out, but he was present and washing the wheels and getting into the crevices. So I just wanted to share that story because I would have never thought of that.
Thank you.
So if there's something that your husband enjoyed, maybe that turns them on, of something that's connected to that. So it was just a fluke incident, but I wanted to share that because it was really, really, I was delighted to see the lights turn on in his eyes and of course the physical exercise and that they were so present, which is so rare.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. Yeah.
I love that example. It reminds me of a story. We had, I was working with a dementia special care unit, and we had 40 people living with dementia, and we got a bomb threat. So we had to evacuate. And so the sheriffs came and they blocked the building. We were all supposed to be here. And this one guy, walked up to the end of the driveway and started kicking the sheriff's car's tires. And, that's not the way to make friends. That's just not what you want to be doing. And so thankfully somebody had evacuated some of the crafts things. And so I got one of those spongy things and got him to walk, to scrub the white walls. Instead of kicking the tires, he started scrubbing the white walls. And it became something he did forever and ever and ever. So that's a great example of something that if people haven't spent a lot of time in recreation, it makes a difference. The other thing, the other kind of really common question that I get asked is, how do I get somebody to do something? They don't want to I say, what do you want to do? Would you come? And we have trouble getting started, and the person doesn't seem interested in anything. And it just, I offer and I offer and offer it. Nothing seems to really appeal to the person. That magic question of, I need help. Would you help me? I'm running really late and I've got to get this car washed. I'm terrible at it. Would you come help me? Or I don't have supper ready and I need some help. Could you please use this plastic knife and cut up this banana for me for the fruit salad? Would you please help me? I need help. And so that idea of the invitation is not for you, the invitation is to help me. Because a lot of people who are currently living with dementia are people who if they could speak for themselves, when they do speak for themselves, are they people who would define themselves as, I am a person who needs help, or I am a person who helps? What do you think? Would they define themselves more as, I am a person who helps, or I am a person who needs help?
My mom would much prefer to say she's one who helps. Much.
Yeah. And I think that's really true for a lot of human beings, and a lot of human beings living with dementia is that invitation, would you help me, just changes the whole character of that relationship, that interaction. It just makes it feel just so different. So if I go in and I say, I know that you are really good with colors, and I'm trying to fix these flowers for the centerpiece for the table. Would you please help me? If you'll just help me choose which ones, I think I can put them together. So then the person helps me choose. And then I say, oh, you do such a good job of arranging flowers. Could you please put them in here? So that way of kind of getting it started is a really helpful kind of thing. And the other kind of questions that come up often about getting people started. So if I say to somebody, if I say to Lisa, and I say, Lisa, so if you'll unmute for me, Lisa. If I say, Lisa, do you want a da 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 da?
No.
Well, come on, you're supposed to da 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 da.
No, thank you. No.
All right. So what just happened? What did you notice happened in that interaction? Why do you think Lisa didn't want to go with me?
I didn't understand what you were asking me to do.
Okay, so you didn't understand what I was at, because I was using words there were a lot da 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 da, and so you didn't get it. And when you don't get it, what do you tend to do?
Say no.
Say no. So if instead, if I walked in and I said, Lisa,
Look.
could you help me?
Okay,
So how is that different?
I understood then because you showed me.
Yeah,
Not as many words, more actions.
not as many words, and I showed you the thing, and it's kind of a cute color, isn't it? So it's kind of attractive, kind of a cute color. And I showed you what I wanted you to do with it. And did that
And-
make it?
And
Sorry?
you smiled the second time. The first time you didn't smile. The second time you smiled at me and made it look more interesting.
So I made it look more interesting. I made it look more interesting. So what about if I went, Lisa? Something to drink or something to eat?
That one.
To drink? Here.
Yes.
Okay. So what was different about that one? What did I do?
You gave me a choice.
I gave you a choice. Do I care? I don't care what she chooses. So that's another thing that will kind of help with that, getting things kind of started. Just to kind of throw out a couple of other universal kind of things, I'm going to put a plug in for a program called Memory and Music, or Music and Memory, which is a wonderful program that really helps you kind of identify a personalized playlist that people can listen to. And it seems like most things are better with music. So whether it's showering or dressing or walking or just sitting and relaxing in a rocking chair, many things are better with music. So that's a wonderful program you can reach out for more information about. So that idea of music. So the last couple of words I'm going to leave you with, and then we'll see if there is another question. The last two things I'm going to leave you with is to try back, and if it doesn't work, back off. Do this with me. Back off, change something, and try again. So I try, it doesn't work. I back off, I change something, and I try again. So it might be that my mom has always loved playing cards, and now she notices that people are kind of looking at her funny, and she notices that nobody wants to be her partner anymore. And so it may be that she doesn't want to do cards for a while because it becomes something that's not a positive. Back off, change something, and try again. So some things that the person used to like at some time in their life might not be the thing that they do like at this time of life. And the last thing I want to leave you with is do this with me. Because what we're trying to create is a flow to the day. So we want to do something that's energizing and do something that's relaxing, and do something that's energizing and do something that's relaxing. Because sometimes what we take on is the idea of this summer camp approach to dementia. And it's like we've got to have every 15 minutes, we've got to have something to do. People need time to be alone. People need time to rest. One last thing to put in, there's a big difference between resting and waiting. So think about that for a minute. What's the difference between resting and waiting? How did I define rest? Rest makes you feel what? Lisa's showing us energized and refreshed, and waiting makes you feel what? Irritated and distressed. So find those things that aren't just sit there and wait and I'll be with you. Sit there and wait. You know, could you help me while you're sitting here? Here's the bananas if you would chop them up for me. Could you help me while you're sitting here? You know, could you wipe this off for me? Or here's a photo book. Let's look through this together. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa, see if we've got another question. I have like 2 minutes left.
Wow, that's a lot of information in such a short amount of time. Thank you so much, Melanie, and everybody for participating tonight and asking such great questions. If you have other questions about this topic and you would like to share those with Melanie, please feel free to email me. You can reply back to the invitation that you got for this webinar. Email those questions and I'll share those with Melanie and see what we can come up with for you. Melanie, thank you as always for sharing your insight with us and giving us new ideas and things to think about. We really appreciate that so much.
It's so fun. I want to take a minute and wave at my friend Marlena from Poland and say, hey.
Thanks for joining us tonight. So again, tonight's presentation was brought to us by Eastside Aware Senior Care and Raleigh Neurology Associates. We thank you all for joining us. We hope that you will continue to join us for these great events that we're having with Melanie and our other experts. We have another Caring with Melanie series coming up in September, where we're going to talk about different levels of dementia. So we're looking forward to that. Melanie, thank you as always. And everyone, thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. We appreciate you. And everyone have a great evening. Thanks so much.